All right, in front of me is the new magnetic variable ND system by Freewell, and well, that's what we're gonna talk about in this video. I'm gonna try to keep this somewhat brief. I have a feeling it's not gonna be that brief because I'm gonna cover a lot of information. But essentially what I want to do is just talk about what comes in the system, kind of show you how to use it, and then did a couple of tests so you can kind of see what's going on with like color shift and vignetting and stuff. And then at the end, we'll just kind of wrap it up and kind of share my final thoughts and all that good stuff. So let's go ahead and dive in and try to get straight to the point. So when you open the box, this box, obviously, you are greeted with this little carrying pouch, and in it you have all these dividers, which everything is obviously conveniently laid in there. So you keep this for safekeeping and for travel. So really nice touch that they included that in here. And then you have all of these components right here. And basically you have an adapter ring to basically screw in the front of your lens. And then everything else after that is magnetic. So for your variable ND system, you have your bases, and then you have your variable NDs. So I said bases because you get two bases, and these will click into place, and I'll show you how that's going on. But you have a standard base, and then you have a base mist, which kind of acts like a pro mist or Hollywood Black Magic or something like that. Basically blooms the highlights and reduces contrast, all that kind of stuff, helps out with skin tones and stuff. So yeah, that's what we got here, and I'll show that here in a second. And then down here, we have these two guys right here. This is a 2 to 5 stop and a 6 to 9 stop variable ND. And they also work as circular polarizers if you flip them over. And I'll show you how to use that and what I mean by that here in a second. So let's go ahead and build it out. I got a lens right here. I'll kind of build it out and kind of show you what's going on and how to use this system. So first of all, let's go ahead and screw this on. All right, so now that we got this screwed on, if we're going to go the variable ND route, you gotta have basically your base, and then you're gonna put your NDs on front of that. So first step is you're going to put the little base in. Now, what you can see here is this little icon right here, and this has got the little Freewell logo, and that's actually gonna correlate to the base right here. Just up in this top notch, there's also a little logo right here. And essentially all you're gonna do is just marry those up, and then that's gonna drop into place, and that's magnetic, and it's not going anywhere. So when you go to install this, there's a couple things to note. First of all, if you're going the variable ND route, you wanna make sure that you see 2 to 5 stops facing outwards. Basically, when you put it on, you can read 2 to 5 stop. But an easier way to remember this too, I get, well, for me, is say you're operating the camera, you wanna be able to read the numbers. As if you're looking down the lens and operating the camera, you wanna be able to read the numbers. If they're upside down, then you obviously need to flip it around. The other thing to note is you're gonna see a little A on the outside of the ring of the variable ND, as well as an A written on the adapter ring right here. So all you do is make sure that those A's line up, and then you are ready to go. And now you have hard stops. So you have 2 to 5 stops, you have 6 to 9 stops, but if you take this off, you actually have a basically 1 stop ND built into this base. All right, so that's basically how you use the variable ND system. And I mean, once you kind of figure out the lining of things, it's pretty straightforward, and it's really intuitive to use and all that kind of good stuff. But actually on the other side of these NDs, variable NDs, you actually have a circular polarizer. Now to use that, you actually have to take out your base system. So it's either your mist or your base. And we'll go over this mist system here, or this mist here in a minute. But to use the circular polarizer, you're gonna actually flip this over so you see CPL. And this is easy. All you do is just slap it on, and then you better just twist it as needed to be able to use a circular polarizer. Really helpful, especially for like windows and stuff like that, if you want to take the glare out. As you can see from this shot right here, it's really handy to have that in the system as well. So essentially what you're getting in this system is you're getting a mist ND system, a regular ND system for like more clinical shots, and then a circular polarizer system as well. And then at the very end, you have this little lens cap right here. It's also magnetic. It just kind of stays on there, so your lens and everything is kind of safekeeping. Although I kind of wish they just made this plastic or not put this Freewell in here, because this is like actually ND. I'm not sure what the strength is or what the quality is, but I kind of almost rather them just have Freewell kind of just branded right here on the edge, so you could actually use this for long exposures or something like that. All right, so that is the system in a nutshell. So let's go ahead and talk about some of these tests and everything we did. And let's go ahead and start off with this mist base right here, because they claim, at least on the packaging, it says 1/8 mist right here. and I think it seems to be much stronger than that. So for example, let's take a look at this shot right here. All right, so this shot right here is on the Pocket 6K Pro, and we have the 2 to 5 stop system set to 5 stops just to kind of keep things easy and consistent for the testing. And this is just with the standard base. This is not the mist base. Now, if we hop over to the mist base, you can see immediately what's going on. Kind of what you'd expect from a mist filter. The highlights are blooming, the contrast is reduced a little bit, and the skin tones are obviously look much softer, so it's really good on skin tones and all that kind of stuff. The only thing that's odd that I'm noticing right here really is there is a little bit of a color shift that I'm seeing, and I'm not sure if that's just from that lamp and kind of hitting the diffusion on the filter or what, but I can see a little bit of a color shift between the standard and the mist. All right, so now that we got that, the next shot right here is still the same 2 to 5 stop filter with the standard base in there, but I've added a Tiffin Black Pro Mist 1/8 strength filter, and you can see the difference here. It's definitely not as strong as the 1/8 mist that you find on the Freewell system. And then right here is with the 1/4 strength Black Pro Mist from Tiffin. So you can kind of see, and it's getting a little bit closer to the mist base on the Freewell system. But in my opinion, it seems like the Freewell system's closer to a half strength, maybe even a full strength mist system as opposed to 1/8. So something to consider. I think it looks really good, but that is something to consider. And like I said, I do see that little bit of a color shift, but nothing crazy. And I think you're going to be fine right there if you custom white balance within the camera with the filter applied first. All right, now speaking of color shift, let's move on to my next test, which I actually kind of tested the color shift of this variable ND system. Now, what I did is basically this shot right here, you can see I have the Pocket 6K Pro, and what I did is I did a custom white balance with the Pocket 6K Pro without any ND on there, and then I kept the white balance the same the entire time. And now what you can see here is on the top, I have the Pocket 6K Pro, on the left side, 0 ND, and then on the right side, 6 stops of internal ND up at the top right corner. And you can kind of see there's like a blue magenta shift with the internal NDs, just to kind of give you an idea of how those internal NDs work. And then below that, I have the 2 to 5 stop ND on the Freewell system. So at 2 stops and 5 stops, you can see there's definitely a shift towards greenish yellow as opposed to the blue magenta shift you see in the Pocket 6K Pro internal NDs. But anywhere between 2 stops and 5 stops, the shift seems about the same. Doesn't seem like it's really shifting all that much. So this next test right here, I'm comparing the 2 to 5 stop to the 6 to 9 stop. And again, I have not adjusted the white balance in camera just to kind of give you an idea of the color shift. So 2 stops and 5 stops look pretty similar. And then all the way up to 9 stops, we're seeing a little bit of a color shift. And that could honestly be because I had to crank the ISO in camera up to 1600, I believe. So that might be also introducing a little bit of a shift. But even so, I don't think that that is a major shift when compared to this shift from no ND on the pocket camera to even the 2 stops. So that's just something to consider. And then the next thing I did is I just compared the Freewell 2 to 5 stops at 5 stops to the Polar Pro Peter McKinnon 2 to 5 stop variable ND, as well as the Tiffin variable ND. So as you can see at the top left, we have the Pocket 6K Pro without any external NDs or internal NDs applied. And then on the top right, we have the Freewell set to 5 stops. Below that, the Tiffin and the Polar Pro, and you can see that there's definitely a shift going on with those variable ND systems as well. All right, moving on, let's go ahead and talk about vignetting, which I think this is probably like the biggest quirk of this system and what I have the biggest issue with this system, and it's kind of weird. So let's take a look at this shot right here, and this is at 16 mil on a 1DX Mark III, so it's a full frame sensor. And as you can see, it's got this weird vignetting on the top left and bottom right hand corners, and the same behavior is exhibited on the 6 to 9 stop. And this is at 16 millimeter. As soon as you zoom into 35 millimeter, then it's a non-issue on there, but there's something to consider if you're using this system on a full frame sensor. Now, I don't really know the science behind variable ND systems and why it's kind of vignetting where it is in the corners, but that is kind of a quirk, and that could be a deal breaker for some, but that's what I'm doing. I'm testing this out and I'm sharing that with you so that you can kind of make a more informed purchasing decision when you are looking into a variable ND system. So all that to be said, if you are in the market for a variable ND system, if you're a run and gun doco filmmaker or a vlogger, especially you vloggers out there, This is a system that I would seriously consider looking into because of how versatile it is. I mean, you have a variable ND, you have a variable mist ND system, and then you have 2 different circular polarizers. I mean, it's a really versatile system. What I would like to see in the future would be different levels of the mist base system, so you can get like a true 1/8 and a 1/4 and a 1/2, just so you can apply those to different focal lengths and different lenses and kind of get different creative looks. But right now, that's kind of a good happy medium. But I do kind of wish that this one that it ships with would be a little less strong, because it is pretty pronounced, especially when you're backlighting a subject or something like that. And the last thing to note is it is magnetic. So if you are on a hike or something, you got to be careful because it is magnetic and it can slip off. And actually, when I was hiking once, when I was camping, I was hiking and just kind of had the camera on a strap, and along the way I bumped it and it just bumped my leg or something, and the ND actually fell off. And at that point, it can get really annoying because you can get all kinds of stuff like stuck in here, and it just starts sounding really gritty and everything. So just be really careful if you're hiking with this system, because it is magnetic and it could fall off under the right force. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's on there pretty good, but if you're hiking and something and you kind of bumped it, like you could bump this thing off pretty easily. So just something to consider. Maybe if you're hiking, just go ahead and take this off, or just be really mindful of where this is sitting. Well, all that to be said, that's pretty much all I have to say about this system. All in all, I do think it is a fantastic system. I would recommend it. I have no issues recommending it, but you just have to understand that there still is a color shift like there are with pretty much all other variable NDs out there. And then you have to consider the vignetting if that's gonna be a deal breaker for you. Other than that, that's pretty much all I have. I appreciate you watching. Hope you have a fantastic day, and I hope to see you in the next video. Peace.